All About Relationships is an engaging, lighthearted, and practical show designed to help people improve their relationships in meaningful ways. Hosted by Dr. Don Allen, a certified Gottman therapist, as well as an advanced trainer for the Institute. He is also certified in emotion-focused therapy. With over 40 years of experience in the field of psychotherapy, Dr. Allen is here to provide expert guidance on strengthening marriages, parent-child relationships, friendships, and more. Through insightful discussions, audience call-ins, and guest experts, viewers receive real-world strategies to enhance intimacy, communication, and overall relationship satisfaction. So now, please welcome the host of All About Relationships, Dr. Don Allen.
Well, hello again. This is All About Relationships, working towards ideal marriages and loving, lasting relationships. I'm Dr. Don Allen, and today we're going to be talking about designing rituals of connection during snow days and God's holidays. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, throughout time, all of you, and me included, have had times where we had regular plans that we were going to do, but it was preempted by something that just caused us to stay put, right? Now, when I was a kid, you kind of look forward to those snow days, but a lot of times snow days happen just kind of like right at the time, like nowadays it's kind of like we get a few days notice, but back then, you could wake up to 8 inches of snow and no school. So that's why I kind of call them God's holidays, because it's like we interrupt whatever you're doing to make you stay at home, right? So that's why I call them that. But the other one is just snow days. We've all probably experienced snow days, maybe not in Los Angeles, maybe so, I don't know, but something that happens that we need to just be kind of pioneers at home, just kind of wake up and it's cold a lot of times. And I'm going to use northern states here, but it's cold. It's something that the news is telling you, do not go and drive, do not go outside, kind of things. And all of a sudden we find ourselves completely disrupting our regular schedule to have this day. Now, it's kind of interesting. I'll talk about some of the potential traps or pitfalls we could have that would really kind of mess with our fun, right? But it's really interesting because usually when I talk to people, these things, if they're safe and everybody's okay, are kind of exhilarating. I remember a long time ago, I don't know the exact comic strip, but I think it was a Charlie Brown. It was Peanuts. And he was really worried. Charlie Brown was worried that he didn't do his homework and he was going to have to go to school without the homework done. I think he was talking to Linus, if I'm not mistaken. Boy, this has taken me back. And so what happened is that he had a snow day the next day, and he was just saying, "Boy, if I had an extra day, I could only do my homework and it would be done," and all this. And then when the snow day hit, he Linus says, "Well, great, now you can wake up this morning and do your homework." And he was like, "Forget that. I'm going to go play. I'm going to go in the snow and I'm going to go have fun and I'm going to do fun things." So that's totally the spirit of a snow day, and that comic strip must have happened, I don't know, 500 years ago. So what we're going to do is to talk a little bit, to slow down a little bit, because a lot of people in America, not everybody, but a lot of people in America really experienced a major weather event last week. Now, I live in Texas, so we started hearing about this about, I don't know, Tuesday. And by Thursday, Friday, it was like, okay, better have plans. And I know I went out for a few things at the grocery store, and I noticed a lot of the shelves were already empty. People were really going in and stocking up, right? I wasn't thinking this was going to last a month, but boy, it looked like the way the the way the grocery stores were set up, it looked like people were preparing for the month. But anyway, I had enough of what I needed, and headed home to really make sure that I would survive the storm. So when I say this, I don't mean to say it for me. I want you all to kind of look at times in your life when all of a sudden your life was preempted by something like this. when I was a kid, like I said, you kind of heard about it maybe the day before. Nowadays, you can kind of plan for it, which is kind of right up what we're going to talk about today, right? But when I was a kid, and I'm saying this for me, but I really want you to think about you all. When I was a kid, you'd have a snow day, and you'd get up, and you realized that it was cold, and you didn't have to go to school, and you looked out the window, and maybe you had 6 inches of snow. Okay. So then the next thing I would think of when I was a kid is it packing snow? Can I throw snowballs with it? Right? Can you make a snowman with it? Can I go to some hill with my friends and relatives, and can we slide down the hill? And do that like a sled or a toboggan or a saucer or something. But can we do that? So that's what I'm imagining. What kind of snow is it? Those types of things, right? Well, now you're kind of in that routine. You're not necessarily going to school. So what are you going to eat that day? What are you going to do? So you go to your family, and all of a sudden they kind of have special kind of things happening. You might get hot chocolate. You might get toast and tea or something. Something that you would do, and maybe you would eat with your mom or your dad. And your dad usually goes to work, but he's not going to work because he can't get out the door either. And all of a sudden you got a family day. You got a family day, right? So what happens a lot of times, and what I'll talk to you about today, is this idea of spontaneous. Right now, spontaneous. What are we going to do? I have no idea. What are our options? Well, you hear your options, and all of a sudden you hadn't thought of option C. Let's do that one. But the thing is it's just whatever's coming, I'm in. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking to who I can pair up with. Let's say I have a buddy, my next door neighbor. Let's say that. Wow, I'm going to call and see what's happening. Or I might call. We had a thing where you could call the local bank, and you'd get a commercial and the time and the temperature. So, I was allowed to call that because I was a little kid and couldn't be on the phone, but I would call and hear that. That was really cool. Say that was really neat. And so I don't know what it is for you all. And different parts of the country are going to be different in different ways. I can tell you, I've only lived in Austin, Texas about 5 years. This is my 6th year. But I will tell you with Austin, it's very different than in the north when we had snow, like when I lived in New York or Ohio or Baltimore. It was very different. But I will tell you, if you get like sleet or freezing rain, you don't have to get a lot of it, and it shuts down the entire city. It's just you don't go out. Especially my office is in the hill country, and I don't want to be on hilly roads when it's that way. So, it was kind of the same as when I lived up north, but for different kinds of snow. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. What is it for you all? I want you to focus on that because we're going to talk at the end today about the next time we happen to have a snow event or a winter event. What can you do to have fun and connect as a family? And what do you want to watch for that undermines that? All right. So that's kind of what we're going to have fun doing. Now, for some of you, you probably got dumped on Sunday. You probably don't have school until next week. I mean, it's that bad because not only did you get a foot of snow, but it's 4 below 0. So that's not melting anytime soon. And the county garage and all the snow people are doing an amazing job to do what they do. But still, staying off the roads for a lot of us is just good practice. And maybe at times the city's telling you, hey, let us have the emergency equipment and the snow removal. Don't go out. So right now, you might be in the middle of what I'm talking about. Hey, we've got a couple more days of this. How are we going to maximize that? Now, one of the reasons I say this, and there's actual research to back this up, is a lot of times kids, the younger they are, the more spontaneous and the more creative they are. As we start to go to school and as we start to do practical things and learn practical things, the next thing you know, a lot of our creativity is replaced by, things we have to do, structure we have to have. And don't get me wrong, I mean, that's very necessary. I remember in high school, you had to do a term paper. Well, the term paper was really kind of an unstructured opportunity for you to take an assignment over time and manage it yourself. So those things are really important too. But I never want all of us to lose our spontaneity and creativity. I just don't want to have it happen. So part of what we want to do today is talk about this idea of structuring our day enough, right? that that we're able to have a plan so we can be that way. I went to a family reunion over the holidays, New Year's holiday specifically, and we had 20 adult relatives and 4 kids, and they were 3 different families, an extended family, and all that. And one of the things I noticed is how much there was a coordination of games they were going to play, activities they were going to do. It was very, very cold where I was. So, what were we going to do in that kind of weather? So, and then we had different ages, right? We had people that were older and we had people that were very young. So people kind of divided into their age group to do really kind of fun things. But I was very impressed by the spontaneity of what they were doing and how they were doing it. So to that spirit, we're going to have fun doing that. So just a couple questions to ask you all to think about. One, when you were a kid and you had a snow day, did you really worry about what homework you were going to need to do the day you went back to work or school? Um, when you did find out, who did you call? Who did you run to? What were you doing right at the time you found out that you were going to get a free day, right? Um, think about the special foods maybe your parents made for you or what kind of happened that normally did not, right? And then the other thing is, how did you notice the adults doing it differently? All of a sudden mom and dad were home. Now today, with the media, with all of the tablets and everything else we've got, sometimes people can bypass a snow day and just completely do work. For some, they have to. Some they have to. The same thing applies is even if it's bad snow day, I used to work at hospitals. You had to get there. You had to do what you needed to do to be there for the people who needed us. So sometimes there's exceptions to this, but let's just for the sake of fun think that your family, for whatever reason, is snowed in and you were all going to be together and you had a lot of, fun stuff, snow, cold, whatever. One other thing I have to share a story for you. Like I said, I'm from the north, and even though I've been in Texas for a while, I really am very used to the cold. So I didn't know this, but about 2 weeks ago, something went wrong with my furnace, and it wasn't working at all. Well, it would get cold at night, but I didn't care. So I woke up to maybe, I don't know, 62 degrees rather than what the thermostat was set for, which was about 69. But I didn't care. It was just cold. Then it got even colder here, and we put space heaters where we were seated, so there wasn't really any any problems with that either. But when it really, really, really got cold, I started realizing I think this thing's malfunctioning. So I went ahead and called a heating company, and apparently what happened was is the motherboard, the computer board that runs the whole furnace was out. So he replaced it. He immediately came back on. But for like 6 days, it was really fun for my wife and I just to kind of run around the house and figure out how we were going to stay warm. And we were wearing sweaters and we were, sitting together and just all of that was an adventure. It was fun. And when they finally fixed my furnace, I was a little disappointed because it was like, oh, that pioneer adventure is over. But you hear the spontaneity. This is the spirit I want you all to be thinking about because I really want you to have these snow winter days, as long as it's safe, right? To really be something that you remember many years from now, especially if it's a doozy of a storm like we just had. So, anyway, what I think I'm going to do is to get ready to break for commercial. And what I want you to do is be thinking about how you would like to have snow days while we're on break. And then when I come back in about a minute or so, we are going to talk about the mailbag. Now, because this storm just happened, nobody wrote me in about questions about the snowstorm. So I made up my own. So we're not going to do mailbag today because of the special snow day experience we're having. We'll see you soon.
Mike Zorich, a 3-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a 6-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2 thirds, and 2 fourths. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor.
Nancy Zorick, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorick has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Okay, we're back. We're back. So normally I have a mailbag section, as I was saying, but today I've kind of put my own questions up here because, it's going to set the stage for kind of how we can have fun during these snow days, right? Okay. So one of the first questions I kind of thought of myself was, why does forced time together, which is kind of what a snow day is, uh, bring out play in some families and tension in others? Okay. Well, I want to invite you back to previous episodes a little bit. Okay. One is remember from the research. And oh, by the way, I want to do this while I put up my information so you can contact me. I didn't do it at the first because we're having a snow day. We're spontaneous. So I'm going to leave this up for a while and you can write down my contact information so you can write me and ask me questions. So thank you. So why does that happen? Why do we have forced time with some people makes it more anxious and some more spontaneous? Well, the reason is because four things in research, right? So you can have spontaneous, which is what we all shoot for, I hope, but then you have control, and then you have rigid control, and then you have chaos. It's kind of a continuum. So what we want to do is we want to move from control upward towards spontaneous rather than more control. So a lot of times, people, when they start to have snow days, the grown-ups might say, oh my gosh, I need daycare. What am I going to do about this? What am I going to do about that? Maybe they didn't prepare. And oh, what am I going to cook? So all of that leads to anxiety and control. And then it kind of spins out through the family, right? Other problems you can have is, let's say, a snow day is a good opportunity for kids to go up in their room and do nothing but play video games. Well, that's something that some people might like to do if they have a snow day, but the word balance comes in. The other thing too is one of the things I notice a lot of adults are doing right now, which I am encouraging, is to balance this more. I mean, we've already had very, very strong research. I talked about Jean Twange's research and a couple other people on my show about how too much screen time is really bad. It's really causing a lot of mental health problems, et cetera. So I just learned on the news the other day that I think France is banning smartphones from kids until age 15. I think Australia has already done it. I know one of the things that's happening in our school systems today in America is that we are making a lot more structured playtime without screens to get kids to interact again. I had already talked on my show about this idea of how Second City television and how Yes Plus One back from the 50s really kind of set the stage for just kids having fun. So what I'm saying is, if you're having a snow day and there's a lot of snow outside, wonderful opportunity for some exercise and for spontaneous play. Snow is whatever you want it to be. If you make a snowman, that's cool. If you make snowballs, that's fun. If you make snow angels, that's nice. If you sled down the hill on it, but it's what you make it. It's not what it is. So one of the things I encourage people to do is to not overbalance with isolating and sequestering, and everybody does their own thing and nobody talks. That's the opposite of what I'm asking people to consider using for snow days. One of the things we talk about at the Gottman Institute is, bids for connection, love maps, and fondness and admiration. So we really need to create environments where we can enrich our relationships with that. And I tell you, snow days are wonderful opportunities. If you can, back to spontaneous, it's a way to partition for just a while. You don't have to worry about anything unless it's a crisis. I mean, if you have to pay your mortgage, okay. But if you're just sitting there going, look, it's really going to be snowing today, I'm just going to hunker down. We really did that. We had an ice storm, I think, Saturday night, and I couldn't even stand up on my patio. So one of the things that I did was, we have really good next door neighbors, and we went over to their house and had an ice party because I could walk on the grass to get over there. And it was fun. We had dinner. We watched an old movie together. Just had a lot of fun. Nobody planned that. It was like, hey, why don't we do this? And everybody said they were in. So that was kind of a grown-up version of a snow day like I did when I was a kid. But believe me, I was a big kid that day. I was thinking about what I wanted to cook and what I wanted to do. So, the question, why does forced time bring people together or sometimes create tension? It's the meaning you give it. And that's what I'm saying. What we're going to do is we're going to say, look, if you've had a day or an episode of tension, we'll talk about in section 4 today how to go have fun and take that time back. Question 2 I put down. Why do we wait for snow days, vacations, or crises, or crisis to be spontaneous, right, rather than choosing connection intentionally? Well, a crisis, what I mean by that is sometimes it really brings people together because we really want to show up for whatever it is. So it's us against the crisis. But snow days, vacations, all of that's fun. A lot of times people have wonderful Christmas, Hanukkah holidays, Thanksgiving, 4th of July. They have fun and they're structured. We have talked about on this show the idea of traditions and having formal and informal traditions. This is an informal tradition that's just brought upon us like a gift, right? So, what we want to do, and I'm going to talk more about this in our third segment, is that we want to have a plan so when it does come up, we can act on it. Sometimes it's easy for people because they just remember all the fun they like having, and then they all get together and do it. For some, we have to build it. So that's why we're kind of having our show today. Okay. So the next question is, when we were kids, think about this. When we were kids and we were doing all the fun things that we were doing, if that was happening, we probably were having so much fun. We didn't watch maybe the parents in the background and what they were doing, not only to have fun and make it fun for us, but just create an environment that's predictable, structured, safe, connected, and memorable. The reason I mention that is if we're grown-ups now and we're adults and we're wanting those kind of things, we can take a page out of what our parents did and make it happen for us. I think we do that a lot of times with Christmas holidays and stuff like that. For those of you who do Christmas, ornaments, you take them off the tree. Oh, I remember this one was from 20 years ago. Oh, this was off my grandparents' Christmas tree. So those kind of things were happening in the background. All I'm asking is for us to notice it more. Okay. All right. So that's good. Let's see. Should we only be spontaneous this day, or should we be prepared to make our own future fun days? That's from the episode that I gave you on what I called, planned traditions and unplanned traditions. Sometimes, like Valentine's Day, which I'm going to be doing a show on, it's a planned day. And it's kind of well timed because it's usually right in the middle of February for us. It's usually maybe cold or dark or something. And it's just a way to take a break and maybe have some romance or have a special dinner or just do something really, really fun and nice with our partner. So those kinds of things are nice, but you could create a day. I'll make something up stupid. I'll just do it spontaneous. Let's say you took 365 days in a year, and let's say everybody's birthday in your family you counted from day one how many days away from day one that was, right? So if you were born on January 31st, that's 31, right? So let's say somebody was born in July. Well, you take that number and you add all those numbers together and you divide by the number of people in your family, and you come up with a mean day, right? The day that's kind of the center point mathematically for your family. And let's say that day every year you make it an all family day, and everybody just has a lot of fun, and you plan things and you just do it every year at that day. That would be an informal holiday. That would be something that your family does and how your family rolls. Doesn't matter. It's your family. You get to make the fun rules with that. Okay. So that's one of the things I'm saying. We can be planful, and the planful doesn't control, it makes it spontaneous, right? So let's say, on a snow day, it's tradition somebody makes homemade cookies. Well, then when you wake up on a snow day, it's like, oh man, we're going to get cookies today. So that's kind of just a fun thing. So what we're going to do, what we're going to look at is how we can make those days and do those kind of things so that next time we're prepared for it. So that's really kind of, what we're going to talk about in our next segment. Now, one thing I didn't mention here, but I think it's really important, and it's more important today than it was maybe when I was a kid. And maybe just we always did this. I don't know. But because we are so much prone towards texting and media and TikTok and some of those things, that we get pulled into our world with our friends and our connections. The other thing that can happen is whenever we have a question we have to answer, we just talk to Google or we go to AI, and we get our answers from that, right? And the reason I mention that is a long time ago, way back when, to when many of us weren't even born, you would go to your grandparents or your aunts or uncles or your moms or your dads, kind of the older community, if you will, and you would say, "Hey, how do you do that?" Right? So let's say I'm a young adult and I don't know how to change my oil in the car. I might go to my dad and say, "Dad, can you show me how to change the oil?" And dad would say, "Well, yeah, sure, of course I can do that." And then we would do it together. Nowadays, let's say I had that, but I have AI. So I just go to AI and I go, show me how to change the oil. And I look at it and, oh, okay, cool. So I do. Completely eliminated the interaction with my dad in that interaction. So, one of the things we have to be careful about is our society, for a lot of good reasons, kind of create more of this ability to solve problems, but it can also inadvertently cause loneliness, disconnection, and isolation. Right. And it can cause it the other way. All of a sudden, it's, gee, I haven't talked to my dad for a while. And I might feel lonely about that. So, one of the things we want to do in these situations is make sure we don't just call our buddies and our friends and get ready to do something, with texting or whatever. We also want to reach out to everybody so they feel included and in the club when it comes to the snow day. What are you guys doing over there? It can be just as much fun for talking to your grandparents as it would be your next door neighbor. Okay. So that's an important thing that I think can get lost in our society now. In one of my really early shows, I talked about, the census bureaus are saying like almost 30% or more of Americans, for example, I know this is all over the world, but 30% of Americans live alone now, where it was only like 7 to 9% in 1968, I think, if I'm remembering that correctly. Point is that, that's a lot of lonely. So we want to make sure we check on them. And I'll talk to you about that just in terms of safety for everybody too. But this is just right now in the episode. This is just talking about making sure we reach out and have fun with everybody. Okay. So what I'm going to do is go to our midpoint commercial, and we're going to come back, and then I'm going to talk about practical tips for doing the things that we've been talking about. We'll see you in a moment.
Master of words, powerful player, What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
All right, we're back. Looking forward to this next segment because, we've talked a little bit about setting the stage for doing this, where we can have potential pitfalls, but I'm going to talk more about that. But let's just talk about practical tips of how we can do this. One thing I want to just kind of mention about that, and I like to use analogies that people can be familiar with, but let's say you go on a camping trip. My joke with going on a camping trip is if it's more of a wilderness pack, where you're going out and, just it's not a car camp. If you forget the matches, you won't do it twice because it's very hard to boil rice when you don't have anything to start the fire with. So some of going on these trips is a learning experience. And then what you do is say, wow, I really have to pay attention to the matches because boy, that was something I really needed. But the other thing you might do is, let's say you go on a backpack, and when you get back, you say, look at all the stuff I carried in my backpack that I didn't need, and it was heavy, and it made more work for me. So, boy, I have to remember not to take those. Well, you might write them down. You might write down, hey, don't take the anvil because that was just really too heavy and I never used it. But the other thing you do is say, but what I could have used was maybe extra water. Or maybe what I could have used is maybe a jacket, because when we got up at the top of the mountain a little bit more, why it was quite cold. So you start doing that, and you start coming home, and you make I don't know, notes about what to do, and then you keep them in a place on your computer. So when you go next camping trip, you have it. So let's start talking a little bit about practical tips. Where I left it in the second episode, or episode, second section today, was I talked about, calling everybody, not just your friends and the people you're going to see today, but also, maybe you call your grandparents, or you call your parents, or your aunts, or your uncles, or, just good friends that you've had, especially ones that might be more shut in, right? Especially nowadays. And you just, what you're doing is two things. You're saying, hey, are you enjoying the day of being hunkered down at your house? What's the weather like where you are? What kind of weather are you having? Hey, I was thinking about you all because I was watching the news in your state, and wow, it looks like you're really getting walloped. Did you get walloped? Is your snow more in your neck of the woods versus some other place? And you're just talking about how cool it was that it snowed a lot. See, and even though we're safe and we're hunkered down in our house, we also feel like we're pioneers and we survived it. So it's kind of cool that way too. But what you're doing is you're sharing experiences together. and you're listening to theirs and they're listening to yours. The other thing you're doing is you're making them in the club. I care about your situation. I care about your environment. I care about what happens to you. I'm sharing in the moments with you because you're important to me, right? Now, in the Gottman house, that's the friendship house. It's fondness and admiration, and it's bids for connection. Extremely important in maintaining relationships. So that's what we want to do. The other thing too is a safety thing. Let's say you called somebody and they didn't answer. Let's say their power went out, their internet went out, and they may not have any heat or whatever. That might be a cue for you to maybe call their neighbor or call somebody to say, hey, I'm not hearing from them. Can you do a check? So, this is another thing that's just very important when we have these days, because terrible things can happen. And we hope they never do. And we really pray they never do. But that's why you just check in on all your peeps. Usually the phone call will be, hey, you're having snow too? Tell me all about it. And that's part of the experience spontaneously about just having a fun snow day. Okay. So you want to make sure you ask those questions and you share in that moment, right? Okay. So that's good. We want everybody to be safe and happy. Okay. So the other thing I want you to begin to do is, back to my backpacking or hiking experience, I want you to kind of do something like this. Now, I noticed on the news people were saying, hey, it's going to be snowy and cold. So what you want to do, best advice, best practices. And some of the articles I saw on the Weather Channel and stuff like that was to put something in your car with jumper cables and a blanket and maybe an old coat or water or something that if you did slide off the road, that you were well prepared. I can tell you, in places like West Virginia, where it's really mountainous, sometimes people can not only slide off the road, but slide down the hill. And it could be 4 days before they find your car down there. So for those folks, making sure you have enough food and provisions that you can be okay until somebody comes to rescue you is no small consideration, right? And back to calling people. Hey, they didn't call. Did they get home? What's going on? So just really important. So in the spirit of creating a utility box that you put in your car for inclement weather, what I want you to do is to consider having something in your house that you can put away, that when you do have snow days, that it's kind of a box of fun items that you can consider. Okay, so we want to do that. We want to create this fun box, if you will, without forcing fun, but creating opportunities for spontaneity. Because remember, what we want to do is move from control to fun and not worrying about things and not overthinking things. And just for a while that day, not even worry about what's happening tomorrow, right? So, what kind of things might go into that box, right? So, this accidental togetherness can be really positive. Now, one of the things I did say is heads up, right? So, sometimes what can happen at home, back to why I want this box, is screens can take over. All of a sudden, everybody is on their screens or doing their own thing, and they're not having fun and connection with this wonderful opportunity to do so. The other thing too is that, let's say I really want to play video games all day and you tell me no. Well, irritability can increase. So this is one of the things that you want to talk about. Hey, we had a snow day. What are we going to talk about with these informal tradition days? And what are we going to leave in and what are we going to leave out? Well, irritability is definitely one you should, especially if you go on vacation. You don't want to pack your irritability. That's not good. The other thing too is connection and spontaneity can become optional instead of central. So what happens then is the tail wags the dog. Why are you having this opportunity that you can't take advantage of? But people need buy-in. People in that family need to say, hey, this is the structure we are going to do, right? So that's what we really want to do. That mistake is overthinking it. If we're together, connected, and structured, that will naturally be better. That's naturally going to happen. Okay. So, with regard to the solution, right? Keep this place in your house so that you know where it is and you can pull this down if you have a snow day or something where everybody's kind of stuck together in the house, right? Okay. So, what we don't want from this box, sorry, there's a lot of caveats to this. What we don't want is that entertainment overload. We don't want to just structure everything so much where everybody's constantly just having fun. We want to have time to, if we feel like just getting by the fireplace and sitting there with a blanket and hunker down and having hot chocolate, we can do that. We don't want to make sure that, okay, you've drank your chocolate, let's go to this. We don't want that. So, that's important. And we do want to have opportunities for entertainment, but everybody's got to buy into it. Okay. We don't want forced bonding. We don't want to have this where, people, okay, we're going to sit together, we're going to do this, and we're going to have fun. And this is what you're going to do, and this is what I'm going to do. That's kind of forced bonding. What we want to do is to let that naturally happen, right? Just go back and forth and have fun. I was talking earlier about the idea that, you call a relative, maybe an older relative, and say, hey, how you doing? Did you notice that wasn't forced bonding? That was just bids for connection and reciprocity that was happening in a way that encouraged that natural way of doing it, right? Okay. So the other thing too is that we don't want to have productivity that's disguised as play, right? So if it's play, it really is something you have fun. Well, what's play? Well, remember what I said when I was a kid? I looked out the window, there was 6 inches of snow. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with that? That's play. It's fun, it's spontaneous. By the time you're 9 years old, you start to create your own rules for play. You have only 4 kids and you want to go out and play baseball, right? Well, you have ghost men, right? Well, okay, you got to go bat. We need a batter and you're on second base. So ghost man on second. And then you have rules about how they score and stuff. It's the same thing here. We create a situation where that will happen. So one of the things that this box will do for you is it creates decision fatigue. And what I mean by that is, okay, what are we going to do? I talked about this in a prior episode like this. Let's say you want to go out to dinner and somebody says, do you want to go out to dinner? And somebody says, yes. Okay, good. You want to have Chinese food? No. Do you want to have, how about tacos? No. Well, how about let's go out for a steak? No. It prevents that sort of happening. So what happens with this is these are our options. Let's pick one. If you don't want any of them, you have to say what you would do. You can't just say no, right? The other thing too is in this box, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but let's say there's board games, or let's say there's a lot of games you guys all as a family really like to play. Well, now, hey, this is a great opportunity. My wife and I, we like to play with others, but one of the games we really enjoy playing is Wingspan. Now, we didn't get to play it over this last snow episode because we happened to have football. But let's say we didn't. We probably would have had kind of a Wingspan game marathon. And there's lots of really cool games. There was one I looked at in France, and they have this interesting game you play with a number of people, and it's called Werewolf in English. It's Le Garou in France. But what happens is you get a card and it tells you whether you're a villager or a werewolf. And then the goal of the villagers is to, destroy the werewolves. And of course, the goal of the werewolves is to eat the villagers. So it's a fun game, and there's lots of episodes for it. There's not just one. Never saw that game before. So wouldn't it be fun to get that game? And then if I was all hunkered down with a lot of people, that, hey, let me show you how to play this game, right? So it doesn't matter what's cool for you, but what's mattering is it's cool for other people, and you can't wait. Just like I couldn't wait to go out and build a snowman. It's that kind of energy. And that's really important. I want you to channel the energy from when you've been snowed in that was really, really fun. I'm not saying that you can even remember it. Sometimes we'll remember big events. Like I remember we had a blizzard of 1978. I still remember that blizzard. And I remember some of the things about that blizzard. But, sometimes, oh my gosh, an extra big event, I kind of think like the one we just had last week, is something that just kind of marks time. But what you want to do is to have that spontaneous ability to join with people, remember when, And again, if you had the joy of something, to really, really do that. Okay. So let's see. What other things I want to talk to you before our last one? Um, yeah, I mean, for me, I just made a couple things. The idea of having a snowball fight as a kid was fun. The idea of having hot chocolate when I came back in. My mom would be there and she would have me put my hands in cool water so that they would stop burning from being outside throwing so many snowballs. I remember we had meals with comfort food. I just remember that as a kid. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's just those are the kind of things that just I reflect on. What do you really reflect on with, those golden memories from when you had snow days as a kid? Okay. Another thing I want to say before we break, and that is some people did not have much fun growing up. They didn't have these kind of days. It wasn't fun being home. They weren't allowed to go in the snow. I don't know, but you do. And one of the great things about marriage and in special relationships, however we have our relationship, maybe they did, and you can borrow a page out of what was fun for them. And maybe it doesn't feel like when you were a kid, but you can create new memories and do some of the things I'm talking about to really make it better. All right, so we're going to go into kind of how to make that special kind of box of fun for you in the next section, but let's go to a break and we're almost done for today. Can you believe it?
Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace. All quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life. Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk.
All right, so now we're going to talk about taking those practical tips and having a fun thing we all are going to do, and then come back and let me know what you thought of it. Okay, now always remember safety first. You know your family, and I do not, but hopefully people have a great, safe family. So, what we're going to do is we're going to take my example from camping. And the first thing I want you to do is, and I want you to do this individually as a couple, and then we're going to come together as a couple. But what I want you to do is to look at snow days and what has worked and what hasn't, and just jot down notes. I mean, it wouldn't take a lot of time with it, but just write down, kind of, I wish we would have, it could have been better if, and then, boy, this was a blast. This was really fun. And write those down and encourage your partner to do it. Okay, so now, once you have that done, what you want to do is you want to look at what you want to put in the box, so to speak. And putting in the box doesn't mean you have to take a board game and stick it in the box, but you can put a card that says, don't forget to play this game or that game because the family really likes it. Or maybe you want to say, I'll pick a new game, we'll put it in there, and then we'll all just have it for when the next time we have a snow day. But, things like games, puzzles, cards, conversation cards, um, those are kind of fun to do. And a lot of them can be love maps. What does your partner really like when you're having a day like this, right? Those types of things. I know back when I lived in Ohio, I had a snow blower and I missed that thing. I mean, just the idea of blowing snow 20 feet in the air was cool for me. That was a great thing I did on snow days. You don't have that in Texas. Um, Also shared, um, of what we can do. One of the things I did spontaneous in this last one is I called our neighbors, and nobody's going anywhere. I mean, you just don't even want to step out on the sidewalk, but I could walk on the grass in the backyard. But I said, hey, why don't we get together, have a dinner together, and then watch an old movie? And everybody was in. That was spontaneous. Yeah, let's do it. We had a great time. We really had a fun time doing it. And like I said, I hadn't even imagined that until one day I thought, why don't we do that? So it's kind of like you're a little kid and you go to the next door neighbor's house and have fun. It's the same thing, right? So how do we do that? Um, the other thing is some kind of nourishment ritual, things that families really like. Cocoa mix, have it on hand, popcorn, tea, anything that people like. I mean, let's say comfort food. Let's say you decide to make grilled cheese sandwiches with tomato soup and a pickle. Let's say everybody likes that. Well, you want to make sure that, if it's kind of bad outside, you have those kind of things hanging around the house. Like one thing I did this year is kind of a New Year's resolution. I know I've been talking about those, but I've been making homemade soup. And one thing I noticed, my wife really likes soup. I like soup okay, but she really likes it. So I've been making soup, and it's been a lot of fun because not only we kind of eat it together, maybe, but it's just really fun for me to watch how much she likes it, and I like to cook it. The other thing too is we have extras. I'll give it to my neighbors, so we all have soup, and then we can talk about the soup. So that kind of thing might be, making sure you have ingredients in your house if you're expecting tough weather and stuff that'll last, so stuff that'll keep. Peanut butter sandwiches are always good, and you can always do toasted if you have heat and electricity. Maybe you have favorite blankets, music playlist, having candles in the house. Sometimes we do that anyway in case we lose power. Some people really like hot baths when it's cold weather. Okay, well that you put down. These are some of the things we ought to do. I think especially with cold weather, it's good to have snuggle time, and I'll talk about that on our Valentine's Day episode. And then one novelty item that's playful, silly, and unexpected. Okay. Conversation starters. Make sure you get together with a family and everybody gets a vote on an armload of fun. I just think that's really important. And then you can draw on things like Christmas Day or Hanukkah days where everybody's together and time stops. And what do you like to do? So some things you can draw from experience with that. Okay. Don't have to perfectly plan this. This is designed to have things that are options for everybody to spontaneously vote on, but it does come from an intentional preparation. The problem when we don't plan is that then we don't know what to do, and that can bring stress or need to control, right? So one of the things I'm going to do is talk in the next 2 weeks. Next week, I think is going to be my Valentine's Day show because I want to give you plenty of time before Valentine's Day. And then the Wednesday before Valentine's Day, especially for romantic couples, I'm going to talk to you all about what tends to go into great sex. What is it that makes these romantic get-togethers especially positive? And it's not a how-to. It's more of a creating an atmosphere for. So that's interesting. You'll notice that books that really sell how to have sex don't really sell, but ones on how to have a relationship and then go towards intimacy, those really do sell. So it's interesting stuff. So I'm pretty much the end of my time. So I want you to all go have fun doing what I just suggested. Remember, safety first. My show is all about relationships, working towards ideal marriages and loving, lasting relationships. I hope you're finding these shows helpful and positive. Please tell others. Please go back and watch the rerun with your partner if you're not together now, and just keep building. If you like them, go back because all of these are important to you. They last, they're going to be true 2,000 years ago and were probably true 2,000 years before. I'm Dr. Don Allen. Have a nice week, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
While All About Relationships is educational and entertaining, it is not a substitute for therapy, counseling, or professional advice, but an informative space for learning and growth. So tune in each week for an engaging and reliable approach to your relationships, ensuring viewers with practical tools to create deeper connections in their daily lives. Whether tackling conflict resolution, emotional intimacy, or family dynamics, this show is your go-to resource for anyone looking to foster healthier, happier relationships in a supportive and lighthearted environment. Every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern.